Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. We are here with Candace Shaw on 92 County Strategy for our Activist Hour presentation. I am Amanda Knoll, and we are here just trying to get you information and let you know what's going on and what you can do to be involved in your community, whether it's a local office you want to know about, whether it's a process or a procedure you want to know about, whether it's a campaign tactic or technique that you need information on. We're here to help give you that information and give it to you for free so we can remove some of those barriers that keep everyday folks from running for offices, because they're the ones that we need out there representing us. So we are a political action committee. We are completely volunteer ran. If you would like to make a donation, you can always go to our website at in92.org. And please share that, subscribe, let your friends know, and come on back and see us. And since the last time we spoke, you can now access our information on YouTube. All of our previous sessions are available on YouTube on the 92 County Strategy YouTube channel. So you'll be able to access those directly from our website as well. So tonight, like I said, we have Candace Shaw with us. Candace is a huge activist. She's been involved in a very long time, lots of different levels, and just has the educational background and the clout, the groundwork, and the street cred that we want to see in people that we take advice from. So, Candace, I really appreciate you coming and joining us tonight. And if you could just tell everybody a little bit about you before we get started, that way they know who they're listening to.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me tonight. So my name is Candace Shaw, and I'm 42 years old, so I'm a young Gen Xer. And I studied political science in college. I started at Indiana University, and like any good person on a 12-year college plan, I dropped out and actually finished here at IUN Indiana University Northwest here in Gary, Indiana, where I live now. I live in Valparaiso, so I live in Northwest Indiana. And I studied political science. And after I graduated, I started a company called Contour Media, and it's a full-service marketing company. But when I was in Bloomington, that's really where I started learning how to organize and become an activist. I was involved with some different environmental issues there, and really just sort of got cut my teeth in Bloomington on what it means to be an activist, what it means to be engaged in my community, what it means to be politically involved. And so I do have a little bit over 20 years experience being an activist. I've also been the strategic marketing person for one political campaign for a politician that we got elected here at the Valparaiso City Council. Valparaiso is a predominantly white community, and we were able to elect the first African-American person to our city council. So that was a really exciting time, and I was excited to be a part of that campaign. Yeah. It was really great. It still is really great. So, and he's very progressive, and we'd love to have progressives in office. So, so Robert Cotton, he still serves in Valparaiso City Council, and I don't see him going anywhere anytime soon. He was a huge Bernie supporter and was able to get elected in one of the most white communities in Valparaiso, one of the most conservative communities or not Valparaiso, one of the most white communities in Indiana, one of the most conservative communities in Indiana. And I think that says a lot for what it means to be able to just communicate things that are meaningful to people, to be able to use social media to your advantage. And I really feel like, that's a testament to what he's able to do. I currently I manage a group called Blue Valpo, and I've been a part for about 10 years, 12 years now. I've been a part of public education advocacy at the state level. And so I'm involved with Hoosier Voices for public education, and we have about 12 different public education pages. Done a lot of organizing with public education here locally in Valparaiso, and I love holding power accountable. And that's one of my favorite things, is to hold power accountable. And a lot of times that means I have to be the lone voice and create interest in issues. And social media is a huge tool in being able to do that. It's completely changed the way we communicate with each other and our ability to organize. So hopefully we'll be able to go through some of that tonight. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started. And what I'm going to start talking about are political brands and social media, because fundamentally, I know we're all activists and this is social activism that we're talking about, but we are developing a brand, and everything about what we do resonates around what it means to build a brand. So if you go to the next slide.
Okay.
So what we're going to talk about, what is the difference between marketing, public relations, and advertising? What is a brand? The new rules of communication in the digital age, and how to deal with good publicity and bad publicity. Next slide.
Fantastic.
So we're going to start with brand confusion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to just start by saying marketing is the big umbrella. Advertising and public relations actually fall underneath the umbrella of marketing. I think people oftentimes are a little confused about what is advertising, what's PR, and what's marketing. And advertising and public relations are a subset of marketing. So are things like graphic design, creative writing, editing, all of that kind of stuff. These are different parts of what it means to be in marketing.
Okay.
So marketing, the overall process of boosting public awareness of a product, person, or service. Advertising and public relations are promotion methods that fall underneath the marketing umbrella. Next slide. So marketing, it deals with a lot of different things, and you can sort of see this here in this image. It deals with PR, it deals with signage, it deals with media, it deals with promotional products like hats and tchotchkes and bumper stickers and, you know, koozies that go around your drink containers. It's, you know, pins that activists wear. It's the signs that show up in people's yards. It's the advertising that ends up on TV. It's everything that we put online. It's what we talk about on the radio. It's what we talk about in on YouTube. We can use video. We can use all sorts of different mediums and all sorts of different tools to put our marketing strategy forward. Next slide. So there's the 4 Ps, and I'm sorry, this slide's a little wonky here. I just noticed this. The 4 Ps of marketing. So product, price, place, and promotion. And we're not going to talk as much about price because we are social activists, and a lot of what we're trying to do is free. So social media marketing, we have lots of different spaces, lots of different websites that we can use to leverage to our advantage. Go ahead. The first thing that I suggest that you start with is to have a plan of some sort. Have a consistent brand image, create your content, and share relevant and factual links. And so I want to move back to have a plan too here in a second. Collect competitive analysis. So you have to pay attention to what's going on the other side of the aisle. It's super important. If you're going to run pages, you have to be friends with people from the other side of the aisle just to pay attention to what they're doing and potentially have conversations with them if you can. A lot of times I don't. I just need to know what they're saying, because if we don't know what's going on the other side, we're living in the dark. As far as having a plan,
100%.
Go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing 100%. There are a lot of Facebook groups that people don't understand why someone may be in. And for me, there are a lot of that I'm a part of that I literally just kind of sit back and listen. I listen to what everybody's talking about. So when I go out there and I'm doing something, I know which way to frame it to where it's current to them. And
I think that's super important.
Yeah.
I don't see how we can function without doing that and be successful. Otherwise, we end up in our own little bubble.
Yes. You just have your echo chamber, and social media, as wonderful as it is really bad for reinforcing the echo chamber mentality. So, having both sides is incredibly important, and not just in research, but just in general. Whenever it's good to keep yourself in check too. Sometimes we as progressives can meet so many people that we like and get along with and have similar thinking, and then all of a sudden our news feed is overrun with an echo chamber, and we realize we're not getting anything from anyone else anymore.
Yeah, and then you're going, how the heck did we lose this election? How did we lose this
Yeah.
race? You're looking in retrospect when really it was there all along. We just weren't paying attention to it.
Oh, 100%.
So, one of the things with having a plan, I'm not talking about some giant marketing plan here. I mean, there's some really simple social media plans out there that help get you on a schedule for posting, that help you understand what kind of timing is critical with social media organizing. People are on social media uncertain times. Actually, tonight's Thursday night. This is one of the best nights for social organizing. Sunday night and Monday morning are the highest peak points. When I go in and I look at my pages, you can pull all of that data for all of your followers on your pages, all of your group members, and you can see when they're using your page and when they aren't. And there are some peak times, and there are some tricks to when you post your posts on social media. So one of the things I do is I really pay attention to that. I'm always looking at the statistics on my page. It's even more important, in my opinion, than what you end up posting. Because you can post 500 times a day, and if you're only reaching a couple people, you aren't doing anything.
Right.
You could post one time a day. You do it at a good time. You have a highly relevant post that provides real facts, not propaganda, not crazy, alternative facts, that courtesy of the Kellyanne ilk here. We have to have good content. It does need to be based in facts. That way you can build a reputation and people come to know you and trust you, and they know that what you're putting out there is going to be truthful, it's going to be candid, it's going to be sincere, and that you're not going to have them running on 500 goose chases and then they're out there looking like an idiot because they post something that wasn't true. So, you want them to share.
And sometimes things slip through. And when it's brought to your attention and you find out this isn't quite accurate or it's skewed, just, apologize and correct it. Either pull it down or put it in an edit with an alternative link so people can get both sides or something. It's not like, I don't think anybody, at least for grassroots organizing, most of us never intentionally share something that is inaccurate. It's something we kind of hold in pretty high esteem. So I try to tell people, just because somebody accidentally shared something doesn't mean they've all of a sudden lost credibility. If they correct it and they go back and they try to make it known like, hey, my bad, then okay. But if they just let it go and people are calling them on it over and over again, then you may want to take another look at what they're posting and make sure you were accurate.
Right. They have to own it, or you have to own it for them as the admin. If you're adminning pages, you have to own it for them. And if you're not adminning pages and you want to get into that, build a relationship with an existing page before you go and try to launch your own, and just get your feet wet a little bit doing it. Because I can guarantee you, most people who admin, they'd be happy to have a little help. So, if you're not adminning and you're posting a lot of stuff on social media, I think that's a good sign that you could probably go help admin a page, and you can learn a lot along the way about what it takes to sort of create some conversation and create that content too. So the brand image is also important. What you say through the images you share, whether that's your main image on a social page, on your Twitter page, or on your Facebook page, or if you're blogging, even on your emails, if you're constantly, the way you sign your emails, you have to convey a consistent brand. Not only, it can't look one way on Facebook and another on Twitter and another in your email. It all has to be the same. You have to look at it as this comprehensive piece of who you are. You may be delivering that brand through different mediums, but it is still the same brand, even if you're talking to someone face-to-face at a rally, or you met someone at the local coffee shop and you're talking with them about a group that you're a part of. It's the same thing, and you really have to have a good grasp of what it means to communicate about the brand of our politics. What is it that we're communicating, and how are we doing it consistently? Otherwise, people get what's called brand confusion. So we don't want to create brand confusion, because it's confusing to people. They will become distrustful, And so it's really important to have that consistent brand image in both your image, in the way you talk, and in the way you represent your groups. So
absolutely.
Next slide. I think we have one more potentially. Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. Collect measurable analytics. We talked about that. It's all there. Twitter, Facebook, all of it's there. You can actually, even on your emails, if you're really using emails a lot to help organize some of your fellow activists, you can actually find some pretty stellar email tracking apps. And sometimes people don't know about them. A lot of people aren't very comfortable with that. But, I mean, every single piece of marketing you've ever gotten through email, it has an email tracking app. They know when you're opening that email. They know how many times you opened it. They know if you clicked through on a link. They know if you shared it with other people, like you forwarded it to 10 people. They know all that stuff. That can be really helpful. One of the things I do, and I'm just going to bring this up here, one of the tools I use, and I don't get paid to use this tool, and I'm not getting paid to bring them up here, but Action Network. It's for liberal and progressive organizations, and it's .org. So I believe it's actionnetwork.org. I'm going to check it here while we're talking about it. But you can create a group. A lot of the emails, like if you're getting emails from Move On or Common Cause, if you've ever gotten an email from Common Cause, they use Action Network, and it is free to set up an account. And it's also free to set up a personal account. It's free to set up a group account. They have a group email. I find it to be better than using MailChimp. MailChimp is a little bit more feature-rich, but I love the way that the email works with our ability to coordinate events on the Action Network, and you can collect donations on the Action Network.
Really?
So if even if you just wanted, so it completely coordinates all together. It helps you build
I'm a MailChimp person. I really like the integration that MailChimp has. So if that's, I'll have to take a look at that.
Yeah, and they have, it's pretty simple to use once you get in there and tool around in it a little bit. It's not as intuitive as MailChimp, in my opinion. And MailChimp is a little bit more feature-rich. But you still get all that great information that you get from MailChimp, and it's more productive for organizers because you can upload your lists in there, you can collect donations, they'll process credit cards, you can set up events. There's just a lot of, you can sell merchandise on there. So like if you were selling bumper stickers as a fundraiser, or buttons, or coffee mugs, or whatever, as a fundraiser for your group, you can set it up right in there. And just so you know, too, I have it set up. Yeah, we're selling, one of my groups is selling yard signs, welcoming yard signs. We sell them on Facebook. And people can go in and it directs them. I sell it on Facebook. I have it listed as an ad there as a product. I don't get charged to do that. And then I use the Action Network as the page for the product. And so people can go in and it confidentially creates a digital transaction for them. And I know who ordered it and I can get them the signs.
That's fantastic. Oh my gosh. I'm going to have to really look into this. This is fantastic.
Yeah, so I think it's a really great tool. So I'm on the page right now, actionnetwork.org. It has, the Women's March uses it. Stand with Standing Rock uses it. I know they use it. They use it all the time.
Yeah.
So,
now, I've noticed that my Action Network, more so than the MailChimp emails, they actually get past the filter.
Yes, they do. That's because it's the way that they're using IP addresses and people's emails together. So it's MailChimp a lot of times can end up in spam. I've noticed that too.
Yeah,
with
it
MailChimp.
does. It ends up in spam or promotional a lot. It just ends up in your promotional tab. And if you're not one of those people that understands the tabs and gets rid of them, or, you know, organizes your inbox where you don't have that, and then a lot of people don't see them. It's like they never happened. So, okay.
Yeah, I've noticed I get better response.
Action Network is good.
Yeah, I get such better response on my emails from using Action Network. They also, you can organize a letter campaign in there. So like if you're doing a letter campaign to one of your senators or one of your representatives, you can organize it from Action Network. You can grab the URL link like having a website for free. Grab the URL link, share it on Facebook, share it on Twitter, share it on Instagram, share it wherever.
You want it hot?
So it's a really great housing location online for all of this kind of activity. And you get great analytics through your email, and you can store your organizers and activists' information in a confidential way. And it's just, I can't say enough about it. So, and it's not affiliated with a political party. It's affiliated with a political leaning. So no, it's not the Democrats. It's not, you know.
That's how we are. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so I love it.
Have to definitely look into that.
Okay, so let's move on.
Okay.
What were you going to say? Sorry.
I was going to say, I was going to say, kind of moving on. Sorry, I have a cough, so I'm trying to chew a cough drop quietly and not bother anybody with it. So, moving on to, from social media and then bringing that around full circle to like the actual public relations part of it, because social media is definitely public relations, but there's more to it than that.
Yeah,
it's not just a lot more getting it out there. So if you could take us into that would be great.
So public relations, the technical definition is creating and maintaining a good reputation between an organization and its various publics. And when I say various publics, I also mean the opposition. And so just like you can see here, PR happens all over the place. It's your brand, it's advertising that you can do, it's your emails that you send, it's targeting your audience and understanding how to communicate with them. Sorry, that has my business stuff down there. I tried to take all that off, and I know I missed a couple of the slides.
No, well, I mean, that's okay. We appreciate the fact that you're, I mean, this is your business. This is what you do. This is what you get paid to present. And you are giving this to us. You're giving this to our listeners and the people that participate with our organization so they can do this better. And we appreciate that. So, hey, Contour Media, if you're paying, we'll help them out.
Yeah, normally I get paid to do this stuff, so it's good I think for everybody here to be able to see, you know, there is validity to this, and I think it's going to be able to help, you know, build everything that we're all trying to work towards. So, public relations is a management function, so it really is our responsibility to manage the public opinion of our groups, of each of us individually. If we've ever aspired to run for office or to maybe run a larger organization or to have a greater public profile, you have to manage your own personal brand as an activist. What is it that you stand for? How do you communicate that? Even as a person. I mean, this is really critically important to understand that this is not just about groups, it's about who you are as a person and what all that means as well. So, you have to anticipate, analyze, and interpret public opinion. So anybody who's sitting on social media for any period of time, anybody who's watching the news for any period of time, even if it's online or even if it is on TV, that's what we're doing. We're not just consuming. We're looking for the freshest, hottest, newest thing that comes off the press, that comes off the social media feeds, that comes off the TV screen. So we're anticipating the new thing because we want to analyze it and we want to understand what that means for us as individuals. What does that mean for us as groups? And what does that mean for all of us as Americans and as, you know, human beings on this planet? So, and I apologize, this is directed towards business. Inform all staff levels of policy decisions, courses of action, and communication. So it's really critical. If you're in a group, the worst thing you can possibly do is have leadership that is not communicating, you know, critical decision-making pieces to other members of that group, especially your key stakeholders in the group.
Absolutely. I have seen it happen over and over and over again where someone will just, and it's not usually necessarily a nefarious thing. They just get ahead of themselves and they start doing all kinds of stuff and then they don't tell anybody and then everybody else is lost.
Right. And then
that momentum that you had, it makes you feel left out. You feel unimportant. And then the momentum that you had gets a lot of it gets eaten up where you're trying to play catch up.
Right.
And then, you know, those feelings are always still there. So communication is absolutely number one, in my opinion, key to any organization. It doesn't matter how good your idea is. It doesn't matter how much money you have backing you up. If you don't have a good amount of communication between your leaders and your organizers, you're not going to get anywhere.
Right. I mean, you can't just go out. Like, you could have the best thing happen. You could have gotten, like, I don't know, you could have gotten a key donation, so now you guys can hold a march that you've been wanting to hold, and now you know you're going to be able to do it. You can't go out and share that with 900 people and not have told your key organizers. You know, you've got to. There's sort of a thing where you're building. It's not just about. You're building a community, and you have to respect the fact that, you know, you need to have the people who are key to your organization need to be kept in the loop. And if you're not one of the leaders in the group, or maybe you're not working on a specific project or something, and you have people who are not communicating with you, speak up. Don't sit back and stew and get angry or whatever. I mean, you can get angry, feel however you want to feel, but don't not bring it up. Bring it up with them. This is politics. If they're going to be leading, whether it's a project, whether it's an event, whether it's a group or an organization, they're going to have to get used to hearing people say things that maybe they don't agree with, or even criticize the way that they're doing things. They're never going to grow as a person if they don't hear that, and the organization's never going to grow and learn how to function better if you guys aren't open to having those types of conversations. So,
I really hope there's a lot of people that listen to this later, because there's a lot of people that need to hear what all you just said.
Yeah. I think it's one of the big problems we're dealing with right now, actually, as activists.
I mean, it is. You just described a lot of everything you described on this page right here, the public opinion and analyzing and anticipating it, and then the communication through the policy action, policy decisions and things like that, and the breakdown of communication. I have literally experienced everything you're talking about. And I think any of us that have really been involved have experienced that. And so there are definitely things that we need to make sure we're filling in those gaps. So we need to do it better. And those are parts that have to be paid attention to.
So one of the other keys is to conduct research of public understanding. Now, this is not like some big go pay a marketing firm thing. I mean, like, if you put a post out there and people are like, what are you talking about? I don't understand. And you're spending most of your time cleaning up after your post, then, you know that you've got some education issues that you need to deal with. Maybe you need to have a public forum. Maybe you need to bring in a couple guest speakers to talk about something and hold a meeting. And, you know, that's a great way to build some events for an organization. But you're never going to be able to influence or change public policy if you don't have these kinds of communication pieces going. And you're never going to be able to understand what level are people at on understanding one issue or another issue. Because the goal is to start bridging those gaps like quicker and faster instead of getting stuck in them. So that's one of the big things. One of the big goals I have, it's not just to come out and protest and to march. We do a lot of that here in Valpo. We have to be able to influence and change public policy, even if that's just at the city level, even if it's just at the county level. If we aren't able to maneuver these politicians that are in office, I don't care if they're Republican, I don't care if they're Democrat, I don't care if they're independent. If we can't maneuver them through what we're doing, then we're not really doing anything. So we need to have those successes, because we've had a whole host of losses at the national level over the past 6-7 months. We've got to start having some of those, even if it is just at the local level. We have to be able to also celebrate when we're able to create a change. Sometimes all it takes is one little change and we know we're doing it. So
absolutely. You know, one seat. If you can get one seat or push one policy change or one issue and actually get it brought up, you know, it does something. But I made a comment about that just recently, where everybody wants you to go out and march, and that's great. And marching, don't get me wrong, is a great way to make connections to further your advocacy. But it doesn't actually, to me, qualify as advocacy. So it's one of those,
You can go out there in March and you might meet somebody that'll help you when you go to lobby your congressman. But in effect, it's not doing anything on its own. There has to be follow-up. There has to be something behind it. We had the big women's march and we had the March for Healthcare and things like that. But it's the follow-up that's so key when it comes to those types of events, and really taking that momentum, that passion that's developed with the march and putting it into what you do after it and channeling it in the right way. And that's not getting done. That breakdown, that communication breakdown, the course of action following the event is definitely not getting discussed. And so that, unfortunately, I don't feel like we're seeing a lot of policy changes.
Well, think about this. So we live in Indiana. Our state legislature only meets for the first couple months of each year. But what they do in the meantime, we just had a meeting earlier this week about having a constitutional right for concealed carry for guns. That is a study committee. They want to make it a constitutional right. They're having a study committee. It meets in Indianapolis probably 3 times this summer. It's Representative Jim Lucas, who's on one of my big, this guy needs to go lists. He's the one who's sponsoring this legislation. He's the guy who had the pictures of the women bound and gagged in the back of a trunk on his social media page and said, how do you know who loves you more, your wife or your dog? Put them both in the back of the trunk and see who's happy to see you when you open the trunk back up.
Wow.
That's that guy with the guns who's wanting to do this, right?
Wow.
We have to show up. Indiana is a citizen-led legislature. You can show up to these meetings, and they give you space to speak and to talk. It is one of the scariest things on the face of the planet, but once you do it a couple times, you can do it at state legislature. You'll be able to go in front of your city council. You'll be able to go in front of county council when they're presenting things. School board's huge.
School board meetings. I feel like school board meetings are a great place to find your voice for this type of thing. Because if you're going to a school board meeting, you're informed on what's going on because you probably have kids in school, and you're going because it's something you're passionate about. So your words are going to ring true, and people are going to feel that when they hear you. And I think if you go to school board meetings and you cut your teeth on public commenting at school board meetings, I think you're gonna go farther in public commenting sessions.
Right.
That when you just walk in. Not to say you can't walk in and shoot off the hip and do a great job, but if you have that nervousness, school board meetings are a really great place to start.
This is where you're building PR. That's PR. They're going to get to know you and your group when you do that. When you show up in person and you say, this is what I believe. And then you go back the next day, you get the newspaper article, you share it on social media, and you say, this is what I said and this is what I think happened. Trust me, people are reading that stuff. They need to know that you're showing up, and then that gives them inspiration to show up too. And invite them to show up with you. Create an event.
Exactly.
Tell them that the meeting's happening. Tell them you're going to go and you're going to talk. Are you going to come with me? You don't have to speak. You can. I need you there just as much as you need to be there. So.
Right. And I've run into. Oh, okay.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I've run into the situation where people don't necessarily want to talk about when they do things like that, either because they fear backlash from their community, or they don't. They feel like it's bragging, almost.
No.
And oh, look at what I did. Look at how I went and did this. And I tried to explain that to someone the other day, that when I post things that I do and I get involved in and I speak out on, it's not a bragging thing. It's not a look at me thing. It's a look at the satisfaction I get out of this and look at what it can do. Please come do it with me.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've noticed, at least in my area. It's hard. It's hard for people to reconcile that and not think it's just blatant self-promotion.
Hey, that's how it is here too. This is Northwest Indiana, and culturally in Valparaiso, when we talk about the culture here, you don't do what I've been doing and what some of us we've built. I mean, this is one of the most conservative cities in Indiana, but over the past 12 years, we've successfully moved to becoming one of the most progressive liberal cities, documentably. and we're literally taking over. We have a state rep and a state senator that we are looking to replace with progressive liberal candidates here. We've been working on that for 12 years. 12 years, some of the activists in the community, people from OFA. You know, OFA is not really a Democratic Party. I'm going to tell you right now. OFA was never the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party hated them. People who are in OFA, they learned how to organize. They learned what motivated people, and we were able to find that there's actually a progressive liberal voice here. The problem is we have this culture where people are taught that it's not okay to stand up and say these things. It's not okay to criticize the powers that be. It's not okay to do that because you're, you're Don Quixote, or like you're just here for your own personal gratification. And it's really hard, but I think the more you practice doing it, the more you'll find if you can focus on the issues and you keep it focused on the issues, show up, make the speech, share what you said, and keep it focused on the issues, then it's not about a person. It's about what you're saying and what you're doing, and you want to bring other people with you to do it. They're invited to the party too.
Exactly. So, yes. Okay.
Next slide.
Yes.
I'm going to start burning through some of these. I think the next ones are going to go. So 5 objectives with marketing. Build your awareness, create interest. That's really critical. Provide information, stimulate demand, and reinforce the brand. And I'm not going to sit on these because it's just sort of concepts here about that. Advertising is a method of using placed messages to persuade target audiences to buy a product. This is propaganda. Advertising is a one-way street. Advertising is a push. There's no push-pull. It is push. You know, it's like the Mad Men style. Here's the ad. You're getting delivered. You don't get a choice. You don't get a conversation. You don't get anything out of an ad. It's just getting delivered to you. So their goal is to convince you in that ad. I think this is why there's this massive love-hate with advertising. So a lot of times there's 4 focus categories with advertising. Product-orientated, image advertising, which, you know, like Oprah is the queen of image advertising. Advocacy advertising, that's what we're doing. We're doing advocacy advertising. And the 4th one, next slide. Public service advertising. Actually, we're doing a little public service advertising too. And I think we actually do a lot of public service advertising. It just gets spun as being contrary here in Indiana. So next slide.
It's spun as contrary here in Indiana.
Okay, so we're getting ready for our next section, the brand, the myth, the legend, common myths and misperceptions about brands. We're going to move real quick through these slides. So a brand is not a logo. So go ahead. So these are logos. They're images. That's not a brand. Brand is also not a plan. So it's not your big strategy. That's not going to create a brand. A brand is not a product. So you got Tide or Lay's. That's not a brand. So brands from A to Z in the most simplest form. What exactly is a brand? And I know everybody here probably does not love Jeff Bezos, but his definition of what a brand is what the definition of a brand is. Your brand is what people say about you when you are not in the room. So let that sink in. The 5 factors of a brand, the brand promise. What will consumers get when they purchase a product or service under your brand umbrella? So in activism, the way they purchase a brand is by continuing to remain active. They're not actually giving you money, they're giving you their time. And I think that's more valuable than someone buying a Coca-Cola for 50 cents. The only perception... 50 cent Coca-Cola. Well, that's okay. Maybe $1. I don't know how much I haven't bought soda in years. I told you how long ago it was since I bought a Coca-Cola.
Where are you getting? Is it dented? Did you get the dented one? Oh, sorry.
I don't drink soda. It's obvious. Hey, I can tell you how much a bottle of wine costs, though, because I like wine. So the only the perception of the consumer counts. So the perception of your fellow activists, that's the only thing that's really going to count. All of the naysayers, they don't mean anything. The brand must meet expectations with every interaction to avoid confusion. And the next one, from brand appearance, so a lot of people worry about what it looks like, to a brand personality. So organizations need to have their own personality. and it will grow organically. It'll change through time, but it needs to have not just an appearance, but its own personality, and that's a persona. Next one. The brand elements, tangible elements of the brand, logo, packaging, and your messages. So you have your logo. What does it look like to represent your brand? Your packaging, that's every single thing. Are you using email? What events are you showing up to? What events are you sponsoring? Are you doing phone call campaigns? What is it like when you go and meet with people? Where are you at? Are you on Facebook and Twitter? Are you, what are all your spaces that you're in? That's how you're packaging the whole thing all together. And your messaging, your content. Next slide. So who is your brand audience? Your customers, those are your activists. Your staff, those are your fellow organizers. Your key stakeholders, that can be a lot of people in your community. Your students, okay, so I work a lot with public schools, just so everybody knows. So I put students in there. And your prospective customers. So who are the activists that you think should be part of your group but are not? Those are actually really critical. All of those people, those are your audience. It's not just the activists in your group, it's like everybody outside of it as well that has heard of your group or ever will hear of your group or has ever even talked about your group. Next slide. Your audience is your community. It is anyone that has ever engaged with or talks about your school or your group. Audience perception. A brand is a person's gut feeling. So this is all about audience perception. So to an audience or to a person, it's their gut feeling. So your brand is a person's gut feeling about your product, your service, your organization, your character. Character is really critical, and your values. What is it that you find important? You center on your character and values in an organizing group, and you stay centered in those. Are you humanitarian? What is it that you stand for? That's going to help you guide so many of your decisions moving forward, and you have to be able to communicate that through content. And it makes people feel very good to know you have a character and you have very specific values you stand for. Why is it a person's gut feeling? Why is your brand a person's gut feeling? Why is it left to what other people are saying about you? And where does that leave you in all of this? So, because people define brands, individuals are inherently emotional, intuitive, and feeling beings. And that is what you tap into as an activist and an organizer. You're tapping into how they feel about things, the way they think about things, and just who they are as humans. Next slide. It's not just the push, there's also a pull. Just because your brand is what they say your brand is does not mean that you are left out at sea. So it's not just about what they push you to do. It's also about what you can do with them. It's the interaction as a whole. So the 5 disciplines, let's move through these. These aren't going to be very important. Differentiate, what makes you different from other organizations. The focus test, who are you, what do you do, and why does it matter? If you have 4 organizations in your community that are doing the same thing, you guys need to figure out how to differentiate. Innovate. It's innovative if it scares the heck out of you. So if you're getting scared, you're probably doing something right. Innovation is creative, and you got to think outside the box. Strategy is left-brained, and creativity is right-brained. You need to have both, and that slide looks really bad right now. Collaborate. This is really critical with activist organizations, especially if you're going to do a march or a rally or some sort of event. Get your other organizations that maybe they differentiate and they do something different. Collaborate with them. That helps build not only internal brand advocacy, that builds external brand advocacy. They know that you're going to be able to get along with other organizations. It requires a collaborative effort, and it's all about personal agency and your brand agency. So you have to have agency for yourself as one of the activists and organizers and for your organization. Validation. Make sure you interact with your audience. It's a dialogue, not a monologue. This is critical. And I know Amanda and I had an experience with an organizer. It was a monologue with him, and it drove me crazy. I tried over and over to get into dialogue, and it just didn't work.
Yeah, it was. I know exactly what you're talking about when you said that too. But yeah, it was a monologue. It was, these are our concerns. This is what we're thinking. Let's get some feedback. And it was, but you're not listening to me.
Yeah, in all
This
caps.
is what I'm talking about. Yeah, in all caps. All caps.
In all caps.
So for everyone wants to understand, all caps is yelling on the internet.
Yelling.
So if you don't understand that, it's yelling.
So we're all Hoosiers, right? We're a state of farmers, supposedly. That's our myth. So we know what it means to cultivate things. We have to redefine our role, continuously adapt. Everything's changing all the time, especially in politics. It's what I love about it. It's what I hate about it. But we have to be able to adapt to it. And we need to cultivate positive perceptions, especially among our key stakeholders.
For sure.
So the new rules of communication. This is another one of our segments. I think this is the third segment of the 4. How audience validation changes the conversation. Next slide. So let's talk about the way we were. Next slide. Okay, we just came out of this period when it comes to communications and everything. We came out of a period that was dominated by TV. It was an advertising beast, and I mean beast. And we all ate it up, and TV was everything. TV debuted at the 1939 World Fair. It began as filmed radio, because before TV, radio was the beast, and advertising was still king there too. The newscasts were a white man, sitting at a desk reading. In 1946, this is really critical, right after World War II, 6,000 TVs nationally. So it debuted at the World Fair in 39. In 7 years, during a war, 6,000 TVs nationally. 5 years later, in 1951, 12 million TVs in use in the United States. I think that is just absolutely insane. 5 years. The networks program based on the least objectionable programming. And advertising was king until the late 90s. So think about that. The least objectionable programming. That's what we're coming out of. How do we tick off the fewest amount of people? That's what we're going to put on TV. That's what they did. And that's why it was what it was. So the roles of advertising and marketing, it gets the messages out about goods and or services. It transmits the messages to target audiences. It affects the elasticity of products and services.
Elasticity. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So I say it affects the elasticity of products and or services, it means, because this is from an economic perspective, so it means how they're going to fluctuate through time in the market. So like demand. It basically it's affecting the elasticity of the supply and demand curve for products and services. And so that's the goal. Is they want to increase demand. With advertising, the goal for products in particular was to increase demand and decrease supply so they can increase the price and profits.
Right.
That's the role of advertising economically. The role of advertising societally is to reflect trends and to encourage trends. And it was a one-way communication model. You can see here, this is the best picture. Advertising, and this is why I'm not a big fan of advertising. You have the sender, you have the message, you have the receiver, the person on the other end. The receiver has no ability to communicate back to the sender. That's a problem. That's a one-way communication model. Telegraphs, newspapers, radios, and TVs all follow this model. So radio, TV, internet, and social, what do these things have in common? They all are hungry for content. The networks hustle to fill that space. The extended reach leads to audience caps. So does everybody understand that? You're going to reach an audience cap. There's a max on who's going to follow a group. Even our groups, you're going to reach a cap on where you're going to be able to go, and then you have to sort of grow in a different direction to be able to bust through that.
Yeah, for sure.
And communal viewing drove pop culture, and there was a social discussion. Even with TV, there was social discussion. It just happened separate from the TV. So the big difference today is that there are two types of conversations. The one-way conversation, which is the model we've moved out of, and the two-way conversation, which is what social media allows us to have. And that's what's driving everybody crazy. And what everybody, when people are like, let's figure out social media, this is all you have to know about it. It's not the one-way conversation anymore. It's the two-way conversation and everything that comes along with that, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And a lot of times it can get ugly. I've seen many, many brands and organizations, they start their pages. Public schools are notorious for this. They'll start a social media page, they start putting posts up, and then they don't know what to do when people start communicating back with them because they're not used to it. They're used to being able to, they live in the advertising world. They're used to pushing and telling people. Well, now we don't do that anymore. And that's the tension. And I feel like there's sort of a generational tension that people are getting through with that, because when you have a whole multiple generations of people who grew up with the one-way communication model, it can be very hard for them to switch to a two-way communication. And that's, I mean, this is really the fundamental thing we're seeing going on with social media, is that move to two-way communication and what it looks like. And the fact that nobody clearly knows how to write very well anymore. So
yeah, that's been very heavily noticed as well.
So why public relations? It's cheaper, there's more clout, and it builds trusting relationships. I prefer public relations over advertising. The difference, advertising, it's all about brand awareness and sales. You have to pay for it. It's ads, they're all commercial. It's about an agency and marketers. Writers and art directors are the people who create it. In public relations, the purpose is to build a reputation and to build trust. The media is earned. It's earned media. You want to get some press time, you got to build those relationships. That's public relations. You got to call the newspaper writers from your local newspaper and start building the relationships and seeing what 100%. Happens. Yeah, that's how you're going to start getting earned media, and send them some press releases. Teach them that there's something out there, because a lot of times they may not know. And if you don't have somebody writing press releases, find somebody. These newspapers fired people left and right. Most of the journalists that were working in newspapers are on our political side of the spectrum. So, yeah. I mean, we have one guy here in Valpo. He was let go from the local paper. Just because it's what he does, it's who he is as a person. He writes. So he goes to school board meetings and city council meetings, and he continues to write articles. And he posts them on our pages for free. He doesn't get paid to do it anymore, but it's who he is, and he does it because that's who he is, and he's a great writer. You can find people like that in your community. Build relationships with them. Find your writers. Build relationships with them. See if they'll help you with press releases. Maybe they'll help you build those relationships with journalists. There we go. Content is press releases, pitches, and everything. So it's all right. The difference is price. Advertising, it's paid ads. We can do paid ads on Facebook. I do it every once in a while, mostly for an event. I will use paid ads for events, or the other time I've used paid ads on Facebook is if I see that it's hot and on fire, like if a post that we've done is really hot, I'll pay for an ad and get that out to a broader audience, because I know that that's a great way for me to build a stronger audience and to build that perception of who we are as a brand. And so one of the big things is cultivating your audience. If you go in and if you're ever going to buy an ad on Facebook, please don't spend more than $5 or $7 on anything. You can get an ad for $2 by just turning it off when you get to $2. So it can be very affordable to advertise on Facebook, but in activism, you have to understand too that the other side's going to see it if you aren't very careful about picking your audience. So there's some opportunities to go in there and really cultivate it. One of my favorite things to do when I build an audience for an ad is I go in and I choose like Bernie Sanders. I want people who like Bernie Sanders. I want people, I go in and I pick figures from politics.
Hey, I know people that like Bernie Sanders too.
I know, and I pick that, and then that ad gets delivered to them. They find out about our page that way. They find out about our group. They find out about an issue, and they found out from you. Fantastic. Yeah, so, and it can be very affordable. Obviously, advertising on TV or radio is just not an option for our groups. We do not have that kind of money.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Public relations,
yeah, definitely not.
With public relations, we have virtually no control over whether things get, it's all earned medium, whether you can build those relationships, but it is usually free publicity. You can buy it. I would not suggest that for our groups. I would not suggest buying articles and doing paid articles in newspapers or periodicals. It's just so antiquated and not effective for what we're doing. So the difference in response between the two. Advertising audiences know when they are being sold to, and particularly they hate it. In public relations, audiences respond well to a third-party opinion. So having an independent source is always a really valid thing to do. Shelf life, ads can be run over and over again, and you get sick of them. Public relations, publicity expires. It's all about what's happening in the moment, when it happens, where it happens. Creativity, advertising allows companies to be as creative as they want to be, and they use buzzwords. This is where we fail a lot of times on the liberal side, is to come up with words that resonate with people, and we do have to get better at this. This is something that's important for us to do in our posts. It's important for us as we build this public relations and two-way conversation model. PR is straightforward, no-nonsense material, and it can be hard if you're leaving it up to the third party to build those buzzwords, but I feel like we're able to do that when we control the content in social media and our emails and communications directly with people. So, philanthropy, public relations, usually philanthropic efforts are covered, and PR, our events get covered a little bit more than they would if we were trying to buy it. Companies usually do not pay for ads to cover their own philanthropic efforts, and neither do politicians. You want to earn this as an activist. What we're doing is because we believe in it, we think it's better for humanity, we can get the earned media on it.
Earned media is like the golden ticket.
It is. It's the best way to go. And then you can share that earned media on social media. And it builds a third-party validation piece to it. So people feel more secure about that third party reporting on something that you did. It's not you tooting your horn. It's somebody else saying, hey, look at this horn. We're tooting it for them. Advertising does not build relationships with the media, but public relations does. And next slide. Your target audience, advertising company designs plans around a target audience. In PR, your target audiences are only reached if your company is featured in a story. So our target audiences are activists and anybody who we think would potentially be an activist, and a lot of times it's our opposition as well. So making the transition from advertising to public relations, you have to build your reputation. And we've talked about that already a lot. So what does it take to build your reputation? It's, what you look like, what you say, what you do. You have to launch two-way conversation. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Write press releases and blog. Get a blog. Action Network has a blog feature on it. So you can write blogs and get on there and do that. Get the communication going. You have to engage on social media. It's not one thing or the other. It's all of it all together. Next one.
100%.
Community engagement. Get out in the community. One of the things we do in Blue Valpo, we do philanthropic things as well. People need to do things that are just good for the community. If you need to go to the local women's shelter and paint the outside as a volunteer project, get your group together and get them doing that. It's not all about marches and going to government meetings and getting LTs in the paper. It's about doing stuff that actually changes the community too. So get in the community and engage with them.
Yes, absolutely engage with the community. And you especially where we live, you may go out there and you may work right alongside someone that you would never align with politically, ever in a million years, if you tried to sit down and have a conversation about politics. But you may be able to go plant flowers together, have a great day, and later on, when you have something going on, that person may remember that, and they may volunteer, or they may donate, or they may just share your information because they felt like you were a genuine person.
Right.
And that's something I'm afraid too many people don't understand.
So I have a question real quick, because we're at 9 o'clock, and will probably take 10 minutes. Okay. Do you want to go over, or do you want me to do this one another time?
Let's go ahead. Let's do this one, and then if you want, we can schedule a follow-up.
Okay.
And go get a little bit more in depth on some of the actual integrations. Maybe you can teach us a little bit about the Action Network and how to use that.
I could do that.
That sounds like a great thing.
We could probably pull it up on the slide and just sort of go through and teach people about it, because I think Action Network is one of the big pieces that helps coordinate the whole package together So,
Okay.
so this
well,
is
do you want to? Yeah, we'll do that.
Let's do this, and then we can do like Action Network, and we can get into, I could even do a tutorial on how to build a Facebook event and get it out there, and potentially a tutorial for anybody who wants to do advertising. I know people who have political action committees, or if you're working on a political campaign, a lot of times you do have a small advertising budget. You can buy ads on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. We could go through about how to build audience and delineate that so you aren't getting people you don't want.
We'll get together and we'll get that planned for next month.
Okay.
So keep an eye out for that, and for anybody that's listening and watching this later on, keep an eye out for that, and we'll have that coming up soon to get a little bit more in depth on some of these really useful tools and technologies. So let's go ahead and let's see. What we got? Brand building. I love the brand focus. It's so important.
The 7 brand building concepts. And I see Johnny said, I'd love that. Thank you. So we will definitely do that, okay? We'll make sure we get some stuff going for events and things, because I think that's probably some of what she's wanting to do. We can do actual tutorial, like a real-time tutorial on how to do it. So
that would be fantastic.
The new rules, 7 brand building concepts in the digital age. So we've been talking about this, two-way conversation. Social media is a two-way conversation. I'm not going to beat this dead horse.
Right.
I apologize. I'm getting over, I think, what you're starting to get, Amanda. And it's dry throat. It's not pleasant. So the two-way communication model, it's the sender a message and the receivers. This is really critical, this concept of new tribalism. This is rule number 2. So rule number 1 is it's two-way communication. Rule number 2, new tribalism. And your vibe attracts your tribe. And we live, it is a tribalistic society that we live in, and this is the best way to look at how to organize on social media. So humans relate to one another based on similar interests and close proximity. And the big thing to keep in mind is that in social media, proximity is digital. It's not just physical, it's digital. So we're meeting people who are in close proximity to us because they're in the same space that we are online at the same time. And unfortunately, this tribalism is also what creates that siloing effect, that sound chamber effect that we're getting to, where we're literally, getting rid of people who are not necessarily agreeing with us 100%. So there's good and there's bad to tribalism. Understanding it is key. The community is king because we seek connection. This creates a decentralized and personal user experience. There's not one, content makes it so there's tons of content out there. There's not one source anymore for communicating what, this is how we're going to be. A digital tribe is an unofficial community of people who share a common interest and usually are affiliated with each other through social media or other internet mechanisms.
So the mutual friends thing. Basically.
Yeah. Mutual interests, mutual friends. This is why we join groups, because we want to be with people who literally are our tribe. They think about things the same way we do. So rule number 3, no validation required. This was probably one of the most infuriating things over the past 2 years on social media. They're working to fix, the fake news issues. But truth or lie, there's no validation required on social media. This is a new rule, and we have to get comfortable with that. We have to be able to understand it. We have to be able to delineate it for ourselves and for our organizing communities.
Absolutely. And one thing is people are kind of just now realizing that aspect, the truth or lie. We used to have the fairness doctrine. We used to have, a little bit of truth in media accountability, and then, that got gotten rid of years and years ago. So this idea that just because it's on the internet, it must be a lie is, I've had so many people come to me and say that, oh, well, just because you saw it on the internet. And my retort is always, well, just because you saw it on the TV.
Yeah.
And yeah. So I'll be excited to see what yeah, exactly.
So the other thing about the validation, First Amendment prevails. How many times in one day, just think about this today, How many times today have you seen on some group or page where there was tons of people commenting, everyone has a right to their opinion. I can say what I want. It's free speech. I mean, seriously. I know you guys see those posts all the time. Even, I mean, this is it does not have to be true, what they're saying. It's about the First Amendment and the right that they can say this out on social media. And it doesn't have to be accurate. It doesn't have to be truthful. It doesn't have to be factual. There's no validation required. It's all about just putting it out there. Next slide. You were just talking about this. That's journalistic standards. There's no journalistic standards anymore. And so no validation required. People believe what they read the most. And this is even more important. People believe what they read first. So like the people who are believing these things that aren't true, it's probably because they've seen it in a couple places and they saw it before other stuff was out that refuted it. It's so hard to refute a piece of bad, something that's not factual. It's really hard to refute it after it's out there. You feel like you're beating your head against the wall because they just won't listen to reason.
And right now with part of the whole digital age and the two-way communication, you have these headlines are coming out within minutes of something happening, and then somebody reads that and they feel like they have all the information on an issue, and 2 days later they may come back and recant 95% of the story, but the person who believes that and is sharing it has no idea.
And they aren't going to come back and half the time they don't even know it was recanted. And if they do, they're not going to say anything about it because that would be embarrassing.
Oh, yes.
So,
embarrassing.
Yeah, this is the reality we live with. So it's important to know when we're posting and when we're looking at other posts. The fourth rule is about time compression. So I love time compression and the idea behind it. A phenomenon that alters the qualities of a relationship between space and time. It is often the result of technological advancements that condense spatial and temporal distances. That's literally what we're doing with social media. We're condensing spatial and temporal distances, and so we have collisions. It feels like time is compressing. We're all running out of time. In all honesty, it's just an illusion. And it's really challenging to free yourself of that illusion, but once you can understand the relationship between space and time and how social media is bending that relationship on itself, it really helps to understand what you can do and in what kind of time frames. So it is a perception. We have a perception of time. Most people don't realize that we didn't, as a world, the definition of time changed when we moved to a central clock. That didn't happen until after the second phase of the Industrial Revolution started. We didn't have a world clock until the late 19th century. We function on personal time before then. There was no punching time clocks. There was no, I'll meet you here at 6 o'clock. It's like, stuff just did not function that way. Everybody had a sense of personal time. Now we have collective time. So, and it's all about perception. We're tied to that clock more now than we ever have before. So I call this the difference between public time and personal time. It creates a sense of urgency because we're all watching minutes. And if you've ever noticed, when you feel like you're running out of time, it moves faster. When you feel like you have all the time in the world, time moves slower. It's actually moving at the same pace, both situations. It's just the way you're perceiving it. And so social media is very, very much so tied to our sense of time compression and the way people understand it, that sense of urgency about things happening. Social media allows for an instantaneous exchange. Believe it or not, Twitter has, I forget how many characters right now, but I love Twitter. I know. It is, to me, it is so much like the Telegraph, because when the Telegraph came out and people were able to send those messages, it was instantaneous. Telegraph literally created World War I. Besides two things did. Telegraph did, and then the fact that there was a bunch of older folks who didn't know how to use the new technologies, and they were trying to use them, but they didn't really understand them. They didn't understand how time had compressed by being able to communicate so quickly.
Mhm.
And it literally created World War I. There was like a series of events that happened, and it all happened through telegraph communications. And, you know, it's really interesting if you study the lead up, like the lead up of just a couple years before World War I, how the telegraph created a lot of the communication between the generals and the leaders, and it shifted the whole balance of power in Europe. So it's pretty interesting, I think. But next slide.
That's interesting.
We already talked about invention of world time, so I'm not going to cover that again. So singularity. Actually, move to the next slide. I want to see I can't remember what I have on the next slide. So, okay, singularity. Going back to the telegraph. The Titanic sunk right before World War I. It was also communicated. The reason why it was such a big deal at the moment is because of singularity, because of the telegraph. It was communicated when it happened. It was communicated so quickly and so far and wide around the world that the whole world felt like they were experiencing it all together. That was unique. And we experience that's called singularity. We experience singularity over and over and over again on social media.
Yeah, actually, yeah, we totally do.
And so that's actually a critical component of organizing, is understanding when a singularity is happening and being able to understand how to communicate about it and what that means for our community of organizers. Being able to lead in those moments of singularity as an organizer is really critical. That's what happened with Charlottesville. That was a singularity.
Oh, for sure. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, you can see what happens. We organize around singularity events. Even if it's just on a small scale in one issue, something can happen in a community that maybe not everybody knows about, but that whole community knows about it. You can have a singularity event happen in a community. So,
I mean, we've had that, lots of times. You have a small town and someone gets sick or a tragedy happens, and then the whole community is invested and interested in committing their time and energies to it. So, I mean, that is, man, I'm glad we did this. I'm like, my paradigm is shifting on some things. I'm very excited.
Good. So, where was I? Time compression. The concept of condensing time and space into a single moment. Because of technology, connections have reduced physical distance, not literally in miles, but in space. And so that creates, this is a horrible picture of that, but like we have this sense of a compression of time, not also because it's of our lack of separation in space. You know, 200 years ago, it would have been very unlikely that any of us that are on this call would have ever known each other, ever. It's because of social media, that bending of physical space and the time compression that has allowed that to happen. This is where our social movements are coming from, social activism. The whole Occupy movement was based on this stuff. It would never have happened if we didn't have the ability to have time compression and singularity events. So, I wrote this before Trump became president. I wrote this before Trump even was running for office. So passion trumps production. Authenticity, positivity, charisma. More is not more. Quality is more. So passion provides the catalyst for it learning to ignite. It's so critical to be authentic, to remain positive, and to build that charisma, especially on social media. Rule number 6, create universes. This is all about curation. So content is king, but conversation is queen. Curation means that you're really starting to understand your audience. You're understanding what motivates them, and so you become almost more specialized. You become a curator of your activism, and then that helps build your reputation as well. People know what they're going to get from you, and they know what you're going to be able to deliver to them as an organization. The big component of it is storytelling. If you aren't telling a story on social media, you're not communicating. It's all about telling a story. Keeping the words simple. You have to keep it at like an 8th grade level or lower. I suggest the 6th grade level. You can go online and actually just Google search. There's free apps where you can take, if you're going to write a post, you can pop it into these different analysis tools that tell you what grade level you're writing at. And if it says you're anything above 6th grade, you need to go back and change some of those big elaborate words. Because you do have to bring it down to a point where it becomes really easy for people to understand. You got to remember, if it takes longer than like 20 seconds for them to read something, if you can't pull them in that 20 seconds with what you're saying, they're not going to read it. So you have to be able to tell a story. It has to be meaningful. It has to resonate, and they have to understand it real quickly. The content must be conversational, timely, and relevant. Don't produce content just for the sake of producing it. This is not about a schedule. Right. It's about, it is good to time things. If you know that you're going to be communicating to people about something specifically, time it. Put it out there where you know you're going to be able to get the most people. But you don't have to post every day at 6 o'clock in the morning and then at 8:30 and then at 10. A lot of social media, and digital media people suggest that. I don't find that to be what it is all about. It's about being relevant and timely and making sure that it actually means something, not just doing it for the sake of it. So, next slide.
Which people can see.
They can see the difference, absolutely.
Yeah, the expediency is definitely something that people are definitely picking up on a lot more than they used to. So that is very big, very important.
So this is a quote from Kurt Vonnegut, a fellow Hoosier. She was asked what she learned from the Holocaust, and she said that 10% of any population is cruel, no matter what, and that 10% is merciful, no matter what, and that the remaining 80% can be moved in either direction. And I feel like that's really what we're trying to do with social media.
Mm-hmm.
We're part of a 10%. In my opinion, the merciful part of 10%. and I know we are because we're the humanitarians. We're looking to move that 80% and to make a difference in the world with everybody.
Yeah.
And so that's really what we're focusing on. It's literally the 80-20 rule, just broken down a little bit further. So most of the time, our organizers and our activists, our fellow activists that we're seeing at a lot of events and things, those are our 10%. Mm-hmm. Everything we're doing is, a lot of what we're doing is to persuade the other 80%. And it's important to keep that in mind. So the super fans, rule number 7, 10% are brand ambassadors, 10% are brand detractors, and 80% are movable. You're not going to hear from most of your 80%. Mm-mm. So our brand ambassadors are those people that we're seeing at everything, and they're working there with you side by side. It's a love-hate relationship. We don't all get along all the time. We don't have to. We need to be able to work together to make a difference. So that's important. Our brand detractors, those are the other people on the other side that just drive us absolutely crazy with some of their nonsense. But we are looking to move that 80% in the middle. It's critical to keep that in mind. That's what Bernie Sanders did super, just off the charts. That's what he did well.
Right.
He knew what people wanted, and he was able to speak to it and provide, solutions for real people. I know. Who are you? I'm from Chicago.
I thought it was Dub Bears. Like it was in my head. As I was listening it.
So who are your super fans? And those are your fellow organizers and activists. Get them on board. Teach them these kinds of things too. Everybody's got to work together. You know what? We're not going to have time for this. I didn't want to go through this one. So.
All right.
Well, this is not one we're going to do. So I think this is everything for us for now. But I feel like, and I think
this was really good. It's so informative. I'll be really happy to get this up and pull it out. And you're welcome, Johnny. Thank you for joining us tonight. And this will get. I'll convert it tonight. I'll get it up on the website and on YouTube right away. And then I'll get a hold of you first part of next week, and we'll see about doing something soon on the Action Network.
That sounds good. I think what we could do is a tutorial on Action Network and a tutorial on how to create events.
Yeah.
On Facebook.
Yeah, and target them appropriately. Not just create them, but create effective events.
Yeah.
I see all kinds of events all the time that get hardly no responses, and and so you want effective events. So
yeah.
Okay, well, Candace, I am so excited that you joined us tonight, and I'm just so happy that we got to meet. I'm glad that the space and time compression created the situation on social media to where we are 200 years now in the future, and we did get to meet, because I think this is going to be really great. I can't wait to see how many people are helped by the information, not only that we just went over, but what obviously it sounds like we're going to cover and is going to be very beneficial to a lot of people. So I'm excited, and I thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. It was good to be here.
Yeah. So anybody that's listening to this later on, don't forget the second and fourth Thursday of every month we have the Activist Hour, and you can always get more information at in92.org. So thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you again, Candace from Blue Valpo, for coming out and giving us this great information, and we look forward to working with you again soon.
All right. Take care, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.